Okay, so I think we just started. All right, cool. Welcome to the live webcast, the FSL3D live webcast.
Yeah, well, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Andrew Bajeri. I'm a mechanical engineer and do a lot of other stuff here too.
My name's Nathan Rowe. I'm a mathematician and software engineer. So I handle a lot of the back-end stuff and not so much of the hardware.
Yep, so we're going to go through a few of the changes we've made to the printer, probably start with about 10 to 20 minutes of updates, and then we're going to open the floor to questions. So I think I'll let you go first and start with the software stuff, and I think you have a little demo.
So there's a couple things. There's a couple things we've added to the software that aren't released yet, but we're planning a new release soon, maybe tomorrow. So I think we just started. Oops. All right. Let me silence this. Welcome. Turn it off. Good. So the things that we've added, we've recently added hollowing in the last update, but the hollowing didn't create any internal supports, and so certain models with very flat tops would fail at the very end of the print when the hollowed interior reaches the top, and then it would just sort of fail to spread outward quick enough to close that hole. So since then we've added internal supports. It's a lattice structure that looks like this. So it's an octahedral lattice structure that does a really good job of creating a stable structure inside hollowed objects without using much resin. It only uses if the hollowing saves you 10 milliliters, then that will take up 1, so you only save 9 instead of 10 milliliters. So it's a 10% cost to the saved resin, but it is worth it. We haven't had any failed prints once we've added that. So that's definitely a positive feature that we added. I have some objects that we've printed with the shelling. So this is an example of an object that would have failed without the internal structure. This is a 4-centimeter cube, and you can see, since it's clear, you can see the structure. You can see the structure inside a little bit.
This structure right here.
Structure. And this top part here would have failed because all of a sudden the printer would have needed to close this whole gap when the hollowing portion ended. But now with the internal structure, it does fine. And you can see that all the surfaces are flat and look really good. We've also got, this is my favorite model to print. It's a tree frog, and it's also been hollowed, and you can see the structure inside it as well. With opaque resin, you won't be able to see that it's hollow. You won't be able to see the internal structure. So we're excited about that, and hopefully it helps you guys be able to print more that you want to print.
Yeah. So I think that I'll just digress really quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
I mean, in terms of where we're going. We're watching the YouTube comments, folks, so if you have questions, go ahead and start submitting them, and we'll get to those. We're just kind of, that's me looking off the screen, is it the comments and everything else, and we have a little outline that we're following through here in the studio. Did you have anything else on the software side?
Yeah, there's some other things that are new and useful. It used to be that when you created supports, you could delete them, and if you moved a support, you couldn't get it to move back to its same spot. And we've integrated the supports into our undo redo engine, so that's endlessly helpful. It was so great to get that working. And so now when you move a support, you can hit undo. When you delete a support, you can hit undo and recreate it. And it just works. So that'll be really helpful. One last feature that we added is now you can switch between metric and standard, so you can work in inches instead of millimeters, which we had a lot of requests for, because a lot of American engineering firms make their products in inches, and then their model when it loaded was too big and things like that. So that will be in the next software release as well.
Yeah, and it looks like we have our first question from Kent. Kent, we can definitely print it on a corner, and that's typically how it would have had to have been printed up until this recent update. But you can kind of, and see if I can catch the light on this
You have to
without,
put it pretty close to
the white balance. This is still at 100 micron, but the surface is actually very, very fine. So that's one of the advantages, is for blocky parts like this or anything with like large hollows, you'll be able to support the internal structure. And again, these are all options that will be configurable in the software.
Right. Yeah, so we actually purposely oriented the cube to be an unprintable orientation before we added the supports. So you could have printed a cube without this software update, but you would have had to print it at an angle. There are some models that you can't orient and hollow. There's just no way to orient it. Like a large sphere couldn't be printed hollow because the flat regions contract together too quickly at the end and can cause print failures. So those can now be printed with this internal structure. Things like that.
So I think the next thing we wanted to discuss was, shift this a little bit, was the shipping timeline. A few people had questions about shipping and some of the hardware updates. So I'll start with the hardware updates, because that's kind of my domain of expertise. We've been trickling the printers out. As people know, we have, I think, about 50 printers that are fully assembled. So one of the things that we've been doing is sending these printers out, seeing that they arrive intact, and then also making sure that people are having success with their prints. So we've seen a few errors that have caused us to make some hardware changes, the biggest one being switching from first surface acrylic mirrors to first surface glass. What we found is that the coating on the acrylic was really subpar for achieving the kinds of results that we wanted, and we switched to glass. There was about a week or two in there where we were testing different mounting solutions. We finally found one that works really well. There's a couple more parts that we're waiting for that should be arriving soon, so we're expecting to send out a pretty large batch now that the hardware is stable to backers in the US. For those of you who are signing in from around the world, we're still wanting to ship within the US and probably to a few selected international backers. Right now it looks like the beginning of August is when we're going to want to send out the international orders. We've got stable hardware, the software is in a good working state. Both are obviously being watched very closely, and the software especially, as Nathan showed, we're updating the software, usually every week or every other week with major releases. But we want to make sure that everything's stable for the next couple weeks, and at that point we'll start to send things out. We want to make sure that everything's good so that people don't have to be going back and forth and spending a lot of money on returns and having to deal with like customs and things like that. We want this to be as smooth a process as possible. So as the update said, if you're international, please go ahead and wait a couple more weeks. If you really, really need the printer urgently, go ahead and contact support. So support@FSL3D.com, and we can figure out an arrangement to get you your printer. I think, yeah, the other questions were about the resin, timeline for the resin. I'll just refresh this real quick. We have a stable clear resin. We've tested a few colored formulations. Really what we're doing right now is fine-tuning and zeroing in on those colors. I think, you remind me what our timeline was. I think it was about 2 weeks for some of our other colors, and other ones about a month.
Yeah. We're going to start the mass producing all the resin. I mean the clear resin at the end of this month. I think so, about 2 weeks, and at that point we'll start doing more colors as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's see. Okay, good. We have a few questions.
I mean, there's also all the questions that were asked in the forums, right?
Yeah. So guys, we're gonna go ahead and go through the Google Groups questions. So keep them coming on YouTube, and if a few of them get answered, if we miss you, just replay it. So we're just doing this off the cuff. So yeah, that covers the hardware. Resin, like we said, probably around 4 weeks is, I think, a reasonable estimate. Some of the pigments are actually a little bit harder, and because of the differences in penetration and things like that, it's actually not as simple as necessary just mixing it in. So we have to tweak it make sure that it's good, and then start to send it out into the field and make sure that it's actually responding well to the the real world use cases that people are putting the printers to. And I think that
one thing we should say is that if you already have a printer, you can get, like, if you've already ordered 4 liters of resin and you have a printer and you're out of resin, just contact accounting, and what we'll do is we'll send you 1 of your liters immediately, and no extra shipping charge. But we don't want to send all 4 because we don't want to. There may be some resin changes, so we don't want to mass produce it quite yet.
Well, we already started. We're just our bottler's late.
Oh, the bottler's late.
Yeah, hopefully everyone heard that. I wasn't looking at the mic, but yeah, basically what's holding us up from sending out lots of clear is just that we had some of our resin had some shipping troubles, so we're getting that pretty soon.
That's right.
And then let's talk about future stuff, which I think is mostly software. Did you have any of that, or?
Well, so one of the major things that we're working on now is we're trying to do a multi-platform Retina Create so that you can run on Mac or Linux and Windows. And to do that, we have to rewrite a lot of the GUI. The original GUI is written in something that can't easily be ported to Mac. So we're going to work on that. And one of the byproducts of that is we'll have a brand new rendering engine, which will hopefully allow us to show a little bit more. Like right now, after you hollow a model, you can't see that the model is hollowed. It's just you can only see the outer surface, and that's because of the way the depth map works in transparency. We couldn't get a fully functional transparency solution in our current rendering framework. So that's something that we should be able to do in the next one when we switch to an OpenGL renderer. But this is sort of a long-term thing. We're not sure how long it will take. Hopefully less than a month before we switch to that, and then it will work on all platforms.
I understood some of those words. User-controlled lift height to reduce print time. I'm gonna let you handle that because you're software.
So yeah, a lot of people have requested this. There's a bunch of reasons why when the resin prints, it lifts the build head. It seems like quite a bit, and it lifts pretty slowly. And so right now, the resin tray when it lifts up, there's no hardware in place to detect when the tray is lifted and when it sets back down. And we've tested out some of these things, and they're surprisingly inconsistent with their results. So we haven't added it to the printer yet, and I don't know if we will. I don't think so. So what we do is we raise up to a height where we know that it must have detached, and we do it fairly slowly, or else we risk having the motor skip. And the motor can skip because the object is stuck to the build plate, or because the viscosity of the resin, as it's pulling up from the resin, there's a lot of suction force there. So for the first many slices, it moves very slow, and it speeds up over time. And then there's 2 reasons why we raise the platform to the height we raise it to. One is to drain resin out of the center in case the object is hollow or has any sort of cavity like that. The other reason is to ensure that the object detaches. And we are working on a full. We've worked on and are still working on a solution that changes the amount we have to raise things based on the location of the model and how much surface area it has attached in the previous layer. But it tends to, if you don't get it perfect, it increases your rate of failure. So right now we're focusing on having minimal failures, which is the most important thing for us. So we don't have any plans in the near-term future to implement an automatic solution. And so people have requested the ability to control it manually so that they can tell the build platform not to raise as high. And we're hesitant to do that, but we might do that in the future. It's just there's a lot of variables that we're aware of that we don't expect the regular user to be aware of, and so we don't want to put options all over the place that confuse most people that or enable a lot of people to sort of break the printer. So we're hesitant to add that feature. It might happen later, or maybe we'll have like some sort of an advanced mode or something where people can manually change some of the parameters if they want. But for now, we don't intend to do that.
Yeah, and it's really going to depend kind of on the feedback. We're pretty aggressive with implementing this solution, and like Nathan said, the variable geometry one will actually probably solve a lot of the problems that people are having. So let's move on to the next one from Reggie. Current timeline for shipping and resin shipping. Details about the changes. I think we talked about the changes.
Right.
The resin shipping, again, you know, like we said, if you want the resin, just shoot an email, accounting@fullspectrumlaser.com.
Right.
They will be able to send you one of your 4 liters. It's only clear right now. And then as far as other colors, if you want to get more clear, we're going to be handling that kind of as the weeks go on and we finally get that stuff back from our bottler. Let's move on to Philippe. International orders. Did you cover that?
International?
Yeah, we touched on that, yeah. So he had a brief question about Amazon. We've been in talks with Amazon. Really what we're waiting for now is we've got another large shipment of machines coming in, or I should say parts for machines coming in this week. And that's, you know, we've made tons of changes in our assembly line. We're pretty confident we can pump out 10 to 15 printers a day. But that's, you know, we've done a lot of work. There are a lot of in-progress units that we're moving forward in kind of steps. So this is really going to be the test for us of, can we maintain this smooth operation? And if so, you'll be able to start ordering from Amazon. We'll have, you know, a pretty rapid setup with Amazon for European orders. You know, we've had a lot of talks with them, so we'll be pulling the trigger on that pretty soon. I'd say timeline 3 to 4 weeks realistically. But if you have these questions, it's always good to check in with us, you know, once a week through the forums, or just shoot a quick email to support. And we had, moving on to the next one, quick demo for setting up on printing. For this person, one VevC, I'm not sure if you want to do a demo on this one. It's hard to see with this one. We have under FSL3D.com/video-tutorials, we have a couple basic tutorials on leveling the vats. We're definitely working on updating those. Excuse me, there's a lot of changes that we want to make, but you know, we definitely think that video stuff is really great. So keep an eye on the website for that. You know, you're asking, so we'll definitely try and prioritize that as much as we can.
And we're going to start packaging the printers with a little sheet of paper to tell you, the basic things to get it set up when it arrives. But for detailed instructions, you'll always have to look at the manual, and we don't plan on printing out paper manuals. We'll just keep it online. But we should. I mean, we are adding tutorial videos all the time. So one of a good tutorial video to add would be, you know, an initial setup video. That's a great idea. We can't really do it right now. This printer's already set up.
So we have another couple questions, and then we're going to go to the comments. This person is from the pre-order group. Right now, pre-orders, it would depend where you are in the pre-order queue. Pre-orders are going to be shipping, you know, based on the current estimates, if everything continues the way we think it is, and that's improving from where we've been for the last couple months. August and then September. Pre-orders will probably start shipping out around mid-August, and we expect to plow through those depending on what we maintain here. You know, sometime in the end of September for those people. So it's about a 2-month lead time right now, but we're expecting to cut that down. You know, within a month, it'll probably be, you know, a few days at most. And then, where the laser reacts, surface, below the surface. So we have 2 more questions. The first one is, can we clarify where the laser actually reacts with the resin? At the surface of the resin in the vat, below the surface, at the bottom of the vat, where the uncured meets the cured. So the laser penetrates through the clear bottom of the vat, which is clear acrylic. It penetrates through the release layer, which is PDMS, and then as soon as the laser, you know, any UV really hits that resin, it's going to initiate the chemical reaction. So this type of printer essentially is forcing the build plate or your previous layer, this little void in between those two is filled with uncured resin, and the laser will basically cure it through. That's part of the reason why we have this special package, is to make sure that the laser doesn't actually over penetrate. So that's really, clear resin is actually quite difficult because you have to tune it very well so that you get good downward facing surfaces. So that's what we've been spending most of our resin R&D time on right now. And finally, regular maintenance. The only real regular maintenance, keep the mirrors clean and don't spill. As we say, the vat will eventually be exhausted and you need to replace the PDMS yourself. You can buy Silguard 184 online. This is another question that people have had, and what you need, it's about 90 grams. We'll come up with a whole instruction sheet and probably do a video for you, but 90 grams of Silguard 184 recoats your vat. And then depending on how level the surface is that you're curing the vat on, you're curing that Silguard. That's what's really critical. That's why we recommend that you purchase the vats from us. You'll have much less releveling and tweaking to do, but Silguard 184, you mix it 10:1, 90 grams total, pour that in the vat, put it on a level surface, leave it for 2 days. If you have a vacuum chamber, that's really great to make sure all the bubbles get out. And as long as it's covered and clear, you'll have a brand new vat that you can just keep recoating.
So we do have more. Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Sorry for everyone on YouTube. It looks like we have actually quite a few more. So
some of these are probably. Oh, the top problems encountered due to operator error.
All you, buddy.
Yeah. Well, so there's two parts. There's the the hardware part. When you're removing parts, spilling resin is always a problem. You don't want to spill resin on the mirrors. And if you do, you have to clean it off very carefully because the mirrors are pretty sensitive to a lot of materials. I've never cleaned a mirror, so I don't know. So cleaning the mirrors, if the resin's uncured, I think, yeah, the biggest operator error with the current configuration is going to be some resin spills. If you're careful with putting in a cutting board or some sort of catchment piece, I've got the bad chair. If you're putting in a cutting board or something to catch the resin, that makes it a lot less likely. But the current head design, which we're working on changing, it is a little bit more prone to spills. So what we usually do is take a spatula. We can kind of show. Basically, we take one of those nice silicone spatulas and just scrape the resin gently off the sides. That way the top is cleaned off. And then from there, what you're able to do is, pull your part out, making sure that something's covered under it. And, that'll prevent spills. Beyond that, the biggest thing that you'll see is, depending on your part, especially for anything that's heavy and solid, orientation of your part and proper supports are going to be really important. We can catch errors. We can do some basic, Nathan wrote a really awesome, he wrote the hollowing, this lattice program, and also some basic mesh repair stuff. But if you have like tons of problems with your mesh or other things like that, those can cause problems. But generally, if you're have adequate supports and things like that, the prints will come out successful. Right, and I think it's something of a learning process what you can get away with in terms of leaving features unsupported, and very thin walls are always going to be difficult, and when a thin wall is angled, it's more difficult. But thin for our printer is quite a bit thinner than an FDM printer. So if a wall is a millimeter thick, then there's a little bit of danger there. If it's 2 millimeters thick, then it's pretty much, you don't have to worry at all.
And it really depends on the scale of what you're building. So one of the things is that our Eiffel Tower prints, as you can see, you can get, well, you can't even see it. You can get that railing, which is, most other printers won't really. That type of very thin feature that's not very long would be fine, but trying to print a 0.3 millimeter railing over the entire Z length of the build volume wouldn't work. So the next question, the capacity of the vat, how are refills handled, and a question about the person that suffered a failure by running out of resin. So we have two vats out in the wild, a glued vat and an injection molded vat. The injection molded vat is the long-term one. It's a lot easier for us to coat. It's a much better vat in our experience than the glued ones. On the glued vats, there are three fill lines, one for the PDMS, one for the minimum fill, and one for the maximum fill. Retina Engrave currently reads 250 milliliters it assumes that you fill it up to 250 milliliters. So what happened there is it was just a miscommunication. So we're making changes to the manual and obviously having this webinar so that we can communicate that the safety zone is 250. So retina engrave assumes 250. With the injection molded vats, there's a series of stair steps, and each of those stair steps, when you fill the resin to the same level as the stair, that's 100 milliliters. So if you're on a very level surface, it's very easy. If your surface is not level, you probably want to be a little bit conservative, and make sure that that stair is actually covered. So we recommend 300 milliliters for that.
And if your printer is not level, then it can fail earlier because the resin is all shifted to one side. So you need more for a variety of reasons. But I think that in our next software release, we're going to reduce that amount, the amount of assumed used resin before it prompts you to refill, just to be safer, because failed prints, no one wants that.
Yeah, the next question we're looking at is the PCB printing. Is that still going to be a thing, Nathan?
Yeah, so the way that we did the original PCB print was by creating an STL model, and it was just a two-dimensional STL model. So we are definitely still capable of doing it. We just need to know, we haven't done much PCB printing in-house. And so we don't know what format is easiest for you to provide us. So we will support PCB printing, and we don't know whether you want to send us a PNG or whether there's some standard format that we should support for that, and then we'll work it out and make sure it's intuitive and it'll work. So yes, we are still going to do that. And so I guess we need to start a conversation. For those of you who are interested in using this printer to do PCB printing, you'll have to let us know, maybe on the forums, what type of format you're used to outputting if you want to do something like that, and what kind of formats you can reasonably get to help us put that together.
Can we get the YouTube comments back?
They're on the right side of the screen, top right.
No, it changed. It did change. You may want to go grab Jay. We just lost the YouTube comments, but we still got a few more questions to
I'll try
to get through. Nathan's going to play with that. The next question, can we speak about the 3D App Store? Free items to download and or purchase premium models. Will others be able to contribute to the App Store? The App Store is undergoing some development. Right now we're focusing on kind of the must-haves. Now that the printer's out, people are throwing all kinds of models at it at Retina Create. So the main goal is to get Retina Create to a point where it's very stable, or stable enough for the majority of users before we turn back to the App Store. We are developing it. The long-term plan is that the App Store, we want it to be a high-quality source for 3D prints. So if you want to make your prints free, if you want to try to earn some money from your modeling and your design, that's all fine. We're still going to work out what the logistics of it are going to be and what it will look like. But you will be able to upload models. You will be able to sell those models or share those models. You're going to have all those options. We will upload our own models. And as you can see right now, the nice thing is that you can plug your printer into Ethernet. You don't need a PC. You press go, and if the mini rook pops out, you know that your printer's in a good state. If the mini rook doesn't pop out, then you know that something probably needs to be fixed. The next question was, are we seeking investors, or did the Kickstarter take care of that? We got, we had a very successful Kickstarter. Thank you, everyone that backed us. I think most people in the channel right now are our backers. We are very, very grateful for your advanced support of our product. We're out there. We're a small company. We want to maintain our company culture. So, if we were to partner with an outside investment firm, they would have to, be somebody that's a good fit for us and, our vision to make 3D printing, high quality 3D printing more accessible, to a broad group of people. Had some questions from Pablo. Different settings for different colors. Yes, Pablo, there will be different settings for different colors. And the colors that have overlapping settings, there'll just be a notice of which colors it's compatible with. A DIY way to make a new resin vat. DIY in this. Oh yeah, of course.
Oh, you already covered that.
Yeah, I covered the resin. You just recoat it with PDMS. Mixing resin colors. Pigments are not very straightforward. We tried to make purple ones from blue and red. I think this was before you joined us. We tried to make purple ones, and it came out a very unattractive shade of sludge brown, you know, untreated sewage color. So some of that stuff may work, but in general, it looks like the pigments are going to have to be pre-mixed into the resin, and that mixing colors won't provide the typical kind of color overlap that you see.
These are comments from Henry.
Okay, cool. Another questions. New vats. Let's check. Oh, good. Sorry, give us just 1 second. We're trying to figure out this YouTube comment thing now that we're moving over. Can't make that.
So I guess we're actually going to be shipping around 100.
No, we shipped on this.
Oh, shipped around 100.
Can you type yours?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, guys. Just a second.
Vats. No. Oh, there's a 30-second delay. That's good. Yeah, those things. Let's see if we can. Full screen on YouTube. See if the comments will work then.
Yeah, guys, we're just trying to get back to our comments.
No. The full screen of the browser. Okay. Does that help at all? Nope. Scroll down. Wow, the comments will not load. You
have to like show all comments. Are we doing this on Jay's thing or?
Yeah. Yeah. It's on Jay's instead of FSL3D's.
Come on, YouTube.
No. I don't know. I don't know what we should do.
I'll just go.
Henry,
I'll view
it
from my.
Oh, from your laptop. You got it right there.
Just from my laptop.
Go for it.
From my laptop. Let's look at this guy. Yeah. Yeah, and for some of the questions that we've seen with the vats, the glued vats work fine. We just end of life those just because the injection molded vats are a lot simpler to handle. If you have a problem with your vat, obviously contact support because that falls under a support issue. But for people that want to get injection molded vats, just shoot us an email. We've tested every vat, so any vat that's gone out, will work well. The only issues we've seen were basically damaged vats in shipping, and that's another issue that we've corrected. So the accessories, the heavy stuff, the resin, the head, were previously shipped inside of the printer. Now we're actually shipping those in a separate box so that there's no chance of them damaging the internals. And
let me link you the page.
What's it called? I described it to me.
Yeah.
No, my Skype is being really ridiculous. My laptop is also like bad.
Okay.
I don't know why. There we go.
Do you see the comments? Let's see. Sorry about this.
Oh my god, I hope it's not
loading. Oh, there they are. Top right.
Top right. Oh, awesome.
Okay.
Okay.
It's saved. Oh, there's a lot.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Top.
Great.
Yeah. Cool. Sorry, guys. I think we're more or less back. Let's make sure we can see ourselves. Oh, yeah, I'm so pretty. Okay. So our first comment question is going to be from Pablo again. Excuse me. So Pablo is asking, given that the vat is a consumable If one print one-offs, is it possible to track usage of at least some areas, divide the VAT into 9 sub-areas? That's something that we're looking at. I don't think we have an implementation plan for it. It's a very good idea, but at this point that's more of a nice to have than a must have. So we're, it's in our development pipeline, but we don't have a timeline for that right now. Okay. Next question was from Nicholas F. Nicholas asked, are the level 4 international orders shipping out before or after the level 3 domestics? I don't know the exact numbers on the different levels when those are shipping off the top of my head, because I think we're actually starting, we've shipped the level 4 domestics, so now we're starting the level 3, so more or less the same time, but again, international orders, check back in with us in 2 weeks. That's our current estimate, and it's sort of going to depend on how everything goes with the new changes. If everything stays stable, then we expect to start shipping those out in early August, but obviously we want to make sure that everything is really perfect before we start subjecting these things to really extended handling by FedEx. Store for parts. Jason M asks, are you going to have a store or something available for new parts for the printer? What about those of us who already have the printer, upgradable at all? Jason, it would really depend on which of the printers you have. The only real changes we've made are to the mirror mounting. So if your printer arrived in good condition and everything is in working order, there's not really any need to go through shipping it back. And if you want to buy extra parts, that's things like that. FSL3D.com and FSLaser.com. You'll be able to navigate to the Pegasus Touch and purchase extra resin, extra bats. If we release any other accessories, those will all be posted online, and we'll make announcements in for as well. John, we answered. Frame. Master Shokan asks, may we have a frame button in the software? Sometimes I zoom out with a dense mesh, and it is hard to get back to the model. Oh, that's already that already exists in the scene tab. You can click isometric left, right, and it will. There's predefined views that it'll take you to. So you just have to click the scene tab, and then there are those 5 options. Next question is from Kent Wardle. Kent asks, can't there be an optical quartz layer under the vat so that the mirror assembly is sealed?
So Kent has something to say about that.
Okay. Yeah. So we I was gonna mention that. If you look in the Kent and everyone else, if you are really worried about resin drips, we designed the vat. If you sort of tilt the vat or tilt the vat holder up, what you'll see is 6 PEM nuts, those insertion nuts around the perimeter of the cutout in the lower box frame. We were originally planning to put in a piece of acrylic. The only issue is that during assembly that makes it very difficult, and up till now there's a lot of in and out, so these printers are getting tested. Everything goes through a 6-hour print test, a whole bunch of burn-in. Putting that stuff in didn't seem like it was actually worth the time and effort, and so far we haven't, over 100 printers have shipped out. We haven't had any problems with spills yet. But if you wanted to put something in, you can screw it into those holes. There's a little bit of room just between the bottom of the vat holder and that box, but the design is for a piece of 1 or 2 millimeter acrylic to sit inside the box underneath, and you can use that. So quartz, glass. If people are interested in that, just send us an email. My email is probably the best one. info@fsl3d.com. I'll see that, and I can get you a drawing so you can cut some acrylic on your 5th gen laser or other full spectrum laser, or go and have a piece of glass made. John SL asks, will the color resin produce better results because the laser doesn't go far into the material? John, there's a whole lot of chemistry behind the answer to that question. The answer is it depends. Different pigments, different additives, all these things are going to influence the chemistry. Some resins use a really heavy pigment loading to try and reduce penetration, but there's a trade-off for that. You'll see faster settling. One of the advantages of our resin is a lower viscosity, but what that means is that the heavier pigment particles are much less likely to stay suspended over long prints. So that's really what sort of delayed us introducing the color, is finding a good balance of pigment loading so that the resin will retain its pigment and not need to be stirred during long prints. But generally, whatever, if you put stuff in there, it's like anything else. It'll block it, but it's a little bit more complex in practice. Next question from Even: is temperature while printing crucial? Temperature while printing is pretty important, and Nathan has a lot of experience.
Today it's a beautiful sunny day in Las Vegas. It's 109 degrees outside, I think. And so we've had some problems keeping the room cool. And when it gets too warm, what happens is the resin becomes extra sensitive, and the chemical reaction can continue beyond the bounds of the laser a little bit, and you get sort of a goopy exterior to the model, and occasionally it will even cause print failures because goop will sort of like attach at the wrong time. So if you let the resin temperature, this is not the room temperature, but if during printing the resin temperature is above around 80 degrees, the ideal temperature is about 75 or mid to low 70s. But if you let the resin temperature get above 80 degrees, then there's a reduced surface quality and increased chance of print failures. So the temperature is really important. If you let the resin temperature get too low, then there can be undercuring, and the viscosity of the resin goes way up, so that the peel mechanism can fail, and when it tries to lift, the motor will skip, and then you'll have problems with your model from there. So the ideal range is maybe like 68 to 78 is what I would recommend. But going below 70 is maybe iffy, and going into approaching 80 is also iffy. So try and keep it's a pretty tight range, about 10 degrees Fahrenheit. All these numbers were in Fahrenheit.
Awesome. The next question was how much for the vats. We're planning to sell coated vats for $75. And the next question, offering extra build plates for sale. At this point, no. All the build plates go with the printers, but I think we will be offering extra ones. One of the nice things about this thicker aluminum plate, and we get a lot of questions, scratches are totally okay. If you look at the bottom of any of our lab build plates, they are really torn up. They print just fine. The biggest thing is that the build plate is relatively level. So we have seen one customer that their build plate had a dent on the corner that caused it to kind of curve down. That would be slightly problematic. It would prevent leveling of the vat. But if the bottom surface, is relatively level, even if there's kind of like large gouges, that's all fine. We have that algorithm that makes sure that it's very well cured to the aluminum. But yeah, eventually we'll have extra heads and vats for sale. We're planning for the possibility of some changes to the build head. We're trying to see if we can improve it as part of reducing the recoating cycle. Would affect the print much. Even you had a follow-up question, so it is pretty crucial. Will it affect the print much? A question about bent or being smaller or bigger. Can you just follow up? Is that in reference to the temperature or to something else? And we'll come back to that. Plug-in for Autodesk Mesh Mixer. We don't currently have a plug-in for Mesh Mixer. Mesh Mixer I think can export STLs.
Yeah, you can export an STL from Mesh Mixer and then load that in Retina Create.
Yeah, so that's fine. We don't have a plugin, but if anyone out there works for Autodesk, we have a few friends there. We'd be very interested in talking to them, because anything that improves our software, we definitely want to do what we can on that front. Let's see. The glass transition temperature. So we haven't done full testing on the glass transition temperature of the resin. Based on what I know about the components, I want to say it's a few hundred degrees Celsius, but it's not a it's not a thermoplastic. It's a thermoset. So heating it up will give it some pliability, but it won't melt and flow nicely. Basically, it ends up vaporizing when you really heat it up a lot. Special finishing techniques on the prints we showed earlier. Did we use any special finishing techniques?
Oh no, actually this one the first one that I showed, the print only finished a couple hours ago, and it sat in alcohol for maybe half an hour or something. I didn't have much time because we were starting this webcast. So then that's it. It sat in alcohol for a little bit, and then we showed it. And same thing with the frog that I showed. But we do have a model here that does have some special finishing applied. This is one that Jay made recently.
Jay's a big fan of the Batman.
Right. And he did a little bit of sanding it in a couple little places, but for the most part, all he did was spray paint it. And so this is clear resin underneath. And you can see so much more detail once it's spray painted, and you'll be able to see that same detail on your release gray resin.
Try to get it closer. This one actually is like really stunning to me. This is a 50 micron print. Expect to see some pictures on the website soon, some close-up shots. Yeah,
probably already up.
It's hard to see. It looks almost perfectly smooth. I mean, actually perfectly smooth. It's really fantastic. Let's see. So as far as the Kent W has another question. Kent, thank you for joining us today and giving us all these really good things to talk about. We question about qualification of third-party resins. We're open to working with other manufacturers. We would ask them to contact us. We obviously have a very strong internal development team. We have a chemical engineering PhD who's working hard on bringing advanced formulations to market more quickly. So we are still looking at the flexible resins, squishy resins, but I think once we hammer out a few colors, the next one is really going to be that casting resin. And we have some initial positive feedback. And on that note, too, we were also looking for jewelers, anyone with casting experience who is able to work with us. We're happy to take STL files, print them, ship them to you, and then work with you to develop good settings to see what we can do to tweak our formula. So if you have an interest in that, info@FSL3D.com. Let's see. Build plate rise, and motion sensor. Kent asks, we talked about the build plate rise procedure. It was suggested a motion sensor. Do we have any plans for a motion sensor? Would our hardware support a motion sensor? Right now, we don't have any plans for an additional motion sensor. The hardware question is, really that's more of a nice to have at this point. I think that as we, look, now that the product is stable and we're shipping, the biggest thing is getting through all of our pre-orders, and at that point, we're going to look back and start seeing, what kind of upgrades can we offer? Are there any upgrades, things like that. So that's an open question, but all of your feedback, suggestions about algorithms, suggestions about sensors, all that stuff is really valuable because it'll help us determine where to go next. Battery backup when the power goes out. So Pichette Pichette P asks, how about battery backup? Can we recommend a UPS? And a little bit about our awesome recovery feature if something goes horribly wrong.
Oh, yeah, that's true. If your printer crashes or the power goes out and then the printer shuts down, it remembers which slice it was on. We were writing something to the printer's permanent hard drive, so you can when you start the printer back up and gain power again, it knows roughly where it was. It just knows which slice it was. But if you've done half of the slice and then you do it again, it usually won't. It might create a visible mark in the object, but it won't generally cause print failures. So you can recover from a power outage already, which which we've had to do at least once, and we've still managed to get the prints completed.
Yeah, in general, if the print fails at the bottom while it's drawing the layer, essentially the algorithm, it recovers the job, it redraws the same layer. If it fails while the print is in the release cycle, what you'll have to do is actually take the motor, adjust it by hand so the print is in good contact with the PDMS,
Oh, that's right.
and then you'll be able to restart the job.
But these instructions show up on the printer, so yeah. So if it prints while the build head is up high, then yeah, you'll have to lower it.
Yeah, but the beauty of the touchscreen, and which kind of, but yeah, for UPS, any general UPS is fine. The printer is 100 to 240 volts AC, 2.3 amps, I think it is. So if you've got an AC, an alternating current, UPS, that'll work just fine. And let's see. Master Shokan asks, what do we think the lifespan of the Pegasus is if used daily? The only, aside from the consumables, the vats, the resin, the PDMS, if you take good care, your build head should last for a very long time. I think eventually, after a few years, you might want to replace the aluminum if it gets really, really torn up. But that just depends on how aggressive you are. If you're using a hammer and a mallet to remove prints, you might.
We sometimes do.
Yeah, well, our vats are torn up and have been used a lot, and we don't see them. Or not vats, the build plates. We don't see that being an issue. The only other moving parts are going to be the galvos, the motor. The motor should have an indefinite lifetime. Same situation with the galvos, and the Blu-ray diode should last 10,000 hours. It's a diode laser, so those things have a really long lifetime.
The screw, I imagine, you may have to re-oil after a year or so.
Yeah. Oh, that's very good, and that's my bailiwick, and I missed it. Yeah, definitely. The screw, you want to make sure we just use a regular mobile Vactra oil, just some kind of light whey oil or light motor oil on the screw shaft of the motor, and I would put a few several drops on once a month. It just really depends on what kind of environment you're in, but that's the only other bit of maintenance. For the USB connection, John SL, John, if you used a micro USB, that might be why it didn't work. It is actually a mini USB, but that's fully working. It's supported. Do we have the internet working over it yet, or no?
No, and we're not going. That's not going to be released in this soon coming update, but probably in the next one. So we will fully support a USB connection for internet as well as printing and all that. But right now, it's the least reliable way to connect your printer.
Yeah, we have. I think you said update after next, right?
Yeah. So it may be in another 2 or 3 weeks, there will be another update that should have that.
And a question from Brian Pierce about the video playing features and the Linux computer on the printer. Video playing is still a feature. We just haven't really done too much with it. We're definitely going to be working with that so that, one day our ideal situation is that you can have some USB speakers and you'll be able to watch these videos or tutorials on the printer. But video is still supported. We just have to create videos and put them on. And as far as the computer, all the software on there is a custom stack. It's everything that we have. All of our software we wrote ourselves independently, and so that's something that we're just planning to maintain on our own. Reuse the alcohol. So the next question from John: how often can you reuse the alcohol until you should replace it? So what we recommend, you're soaking the prints in alcohol. There's a few different ways. It really depends on how cost sensitive you are. The really high-end, reuse alcohol more or less indefinitely, you can get a filter and a pump and some tanks, and basically have a tank that the resin gets, or that the alcohol gets pumped through, that's out in the sun or under a UV lamp. That will basically cure and harden the resin. It'll fall to the bottom of that tank. You filter it, and then you can put it back into a fresh tank. That's a pretty high-end system. We don't really do that. What we do is we take the alcohol, put it in large vats, and then leave it in the sun for the resin to cure out. And then essentially when the resin cures, we pour off the excess alcohol and reuse it. So we reuse alcohol a lot. The practical limit is that as soon as you start to see your prints like picking up color, picking up a lot of extra surface goopiness that wasn't there when you put them into the alcohol, that's a good time to change it or to filter it. Brian Long, I think there was I missed a question on speed, but that is still the 3,000 millimeters a second is still the drying speed. Even asked about European stock of resin. Again, that's the resin is definitely something that's going to hit Europe first, probably before the printers. Looking at different third-party logistics platforms, Amazon is one. We're just working through kind of the regulatory stuff right now. So we have a U.S. MSDS. We need to get that set up to comply with all EU regulations. But yeah, we understand the frustration. We understand there's tons of people in Europe that want to use this printer. And that's very high on our list of priorities. So that you'll be seeing an announcement probably in the next 2 to 4 weeks. Cryosis asks, how long does it take to print an object that uses the entire build height for an object that uses 250 milliliters of resin? Does an object use the entire build height?
So when we print the max size Eiffel Tower, it uses about 100 milliliters of resin, I think. And I don't remember how long that takes. Maybe like 13 hours. Or
in general, the Z height, because of how fast the actual like curing process is and the drawing process is, the real limiting factor is the recoating, which is why we're trying so hard to reduce that. You know, make that recoating cycle really fast. I think right now it's, you know, you can, as a rough rule of thumb, you can guess however many layers you have times whatever the recoating cycle is, which is what, like 18 seconds or something right now. 20 seconds. What is it
per layer?
The recoating cycle.
I think it's 15 or 16 seconds.
Yeah. So generally, as a rule of thumb, if you want to get a quick estimate, you kind of just treat the curing laser as instantaneous, and then, you know, about 15 seconds per layer. So realistically, it's a little bit longer depending on how big your part is, anywhere from, you know, 15 seconds all the way up conceivably to 20 seconds, you know, per layer, and then multiply that by the number of layers. And I think, you know, it looks like we're out of questions.
We caught up.
We caught up, and pretty much just on time.
About an hour. Yeah.
All right. We've got, guys, another 30 seconds. Get your last questions in. If there's anything, you know, if we missed you earlier with the questions or something else, go ahead and, you know, shoot it on YouTube right now. Otherwise, that's really it. Keep an eye on our website. We're working on a lot of really cool things. We're going to be, you know, Twitter's a good way to interact with us. I kind of run our Twitter, our Instagram. We have a Vine too. I just got back from Red Bull Creation, which was a really, really awesome competition out in Detroit. We gave away, well, they posed with one of the printers, but we gave away a spot in line for 2 months from now to one of the winning teams.
Oh, we didn't give it to them on the spot?
No. They have to wait in line. They won a free spot in line. But we have our current customers are definitely a little bit more important because they've given us money.
Yeah,
and they've supported us on Kickstarter.
Anyway, let us know if you found this helpful and enjoyable. We can definitely do more of these if you prefer, and we'll continue to answer questions on the forums and your contact support that can help you with individual issues with your printers. But then that, thanks for watching. Did we get any more questions?
No, I think that's it.
Right.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate. Yeah, we try to keep up on the forums, but if you do have something's wrong with your printer, email support@fsl3d.com. We keep a very close watch on any incoming support tickets, and that's the best way. We like to, you know, we want to handle it on a queue because our support team does handle the lasers as well. So, you know, shoot us an email, support@fsl3d.com, at fsl3d.com. If you have any kind of problems, general questions, things like that, please use the forums. We do spend time on there, or email us directly. And that's it. Thank you, everybody, and we will talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you.